newly energized Democratic Party is poised to make a dent in the GOP's dominance in Brevard County. Since President Trump's election, the local party has reorganized and made some gains in the 2017 municipal elections. Welcome to Florida Today's Eye on Brevard. I'm Isadora. The woman behind this Democratic energy is Party Chair Stacey Patel. We talked this week about her strategy for the November elections, who her best candidates are, and lessons learned from Hillary Clinton's defeat. Watch. Stacey, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Isadora.
So let's go back to 2016. We're going to talk about the midterm elections, but I want to know what has happened since you took control of the Democratic Executive Committee. What have you done? What was your goal? How close are you to reaching that goal?
So my goal was to really activate Democrats in Brevard County and to make sure that we really could put forth a grassroots response to anything that happened in our community. So our membership has increased by almost 500%. We were the largest delegation at last year's state convention, the Florida Democratic Party state convention. We won the award for for knocking the most doors in the state of Florida, more than Miami, more than Tampa.
How many doors did you knock on?
In the 5 weeks leading up to the municipals last year, we knocked over 16,000 doors with all volunteers. And we know that knocking doors and talking to people and talking to our neighbors is how we're going to win elections. We also won 3 municipals that most people would have counted us out of. So we are learning the skills that it's going to take to win these elections, and we're excited for the midterms.
Yeah, so I think you guys put a lot of effort into the municipal elections, which are nonpartisan. So there was some criticism from Republicans that the Democrats made these races partisan. What is your take on that?
I think they've been doing this for decades, so I think it's hypocritical at best. And I also think that supporting candidates and making sure that people are heard in our democracy, making sure that we have candidates in these roles is really important at every level of government. So I'm proud of what we did, and I'm proud of the way that we supported our candidates. I don't think any party or any person should be scared when their neighbors are getting out and knocking doors and talking to their neighbors about the future of our community and the future of our country.
And Brevard being such a Republican county that voted overwhelmingly for Trump, where's this new energy coming from? And I hear that you guys are doing such a great job with the DC in terms of organizing the party, but where is it coming from? Are these people who are not Democrats before? Were they just complacent or not, vocal enough?
I think it's coming from a lot of places. So before the 2016 election, you saw I came in with 60 other people because I saw the need to reform the party here locally. So we had that base to draw from. Then when the election didn't go as any of us hoped, you saw a lot more energy pour in that way too. We do have nonpartisans who are switching over. We do have rational Republicans who are switching over. So I think it's coming from all of those places, but most of all, I think what we've been able to do is transform that energy of outrage that people are feeling, that energy of discontent, into real positive change. So the fact that we've been able to win elections, the fact that we're training people how to reach out and transform this into an opportunity as opposed to just frustration has been really successful for us, pulling people into the party.
So, and the big task is going to be this year with the midterm elections. What is your strategy going into this in a county that hasn't elected a Democrat since, I believe, Robin Fisher, former county commissioner? How do you reverse that trend?
I think, first of all, our strategy has to be to run candidates. This is the first time in over a quarter of a century where we've actually had candidates in every state legislature race. So I think that is going to bode well for us. Some folks will openly admit that they're Republicans because they felt like that was the only place that they could vote because there weren't candidates on our side. So first, we're fielding candidates. And secondly, we are really just trying to turn out as I said, we're trying to turn this outrage into momentum and trying to give people the opportunity to learn the skills that it's going to take to win these elections. So we're looking at every level of government, from municipal to federal, and trying to run candidates and trying to build campaigns that can really be successful.
And I'm sure you're watching what's happening in the rest of the country. We're seeing Democrats pick up seats in Virginia, and then most recently in Pennsylvania with Connor Lamb. But let's look at Pennsylvania specifically. What does that teach us, and does that apply to Brevard? I mean, can we extrapolate that to a county such as Brevard?
I think we can take all of these elections and extrapolate them to here. I think what you saw there was an upsurge in energy and an ability by a politician to transform that into a win. I think his district went 20% for Trump. Obviously, our margins were large for Trump as well. So I do think it bodes well for us. I think the elections, even here in Sarasota in Florida, where we saw Margaret Good win in
pick up a state house seat.
Exactly. I think that bodes well for us, and even back to Tadeo. So I think that the national scene is obviously going to portend well for us, but ultimately it's going to come down to, is our party going to do the work to turn this around? And I think we're building a party that's capable of doing that. I
think one of the things that Pennsylvania has sort of taught us is that the quality of the candidate also counts more than just what party he or she belongs to. I think Lamb was a veteran. Who was more moderate, although he ran against a lot of Trump's policies. How hard is it to find qualified candidates in Brevard, where Democrats have been sort of dormant for so long?
Absolutely, it is definitely a challenge, but with so many people kind of experiencing a resurgent party, we are seeing people step into these positions who may otherwise not have gotten involved. So I'm really excited, for instance, Melissa Martin, who's running for state senate up in 14.
Against Dorothy Hukill.
Against Dorothy Hukill. She is also a veteran. She's a former JAG, Judge Advocate General. She's an attorney. She's a mom, and she's also done a lot of activism work. I'm not sure if this particular situation hadn't happened where our party was healthy enough to support a candidacy like that, and where the national environment was so healthy that we'd be able to attract candidates of that caliber. So I'm excited to see the candidates that we're running.
And I'm particularly interested in that race because Dorothy Hukill, she's a well-known Republican, well-liked, no scandals. She is part of leadership in the Senate, can bring a lot of money into the race, and a lot of outside groups who can run attack ads against Melissa Martin. I mean,
I dare them. I mean, honestly, I know Melissa well.
But they will. They will find something, and a lot of times they're so hard to track where the money is coming from.
Absolutely.
So you can't really hold anyone accountable. How do you overcome that? Someone with so much money, the power of incumbency, and who has a record that so far has, we don't see any negatives.
Right. You overcome it by talking to your neighbors and building the case that, unfortunately, for better or worse, parties tend to work together, and we know that the agenda of our country and our state and our community needs to change. So are you going to vote for a party that is leading, frankly, our country in a direction that many of us are finding challenging at best? Or are you going to try to lead it in a new direction? I think people are ready to take our country and our community in a new direction.
And your husband, Stacey Patel, is running against Bill Posey.
Yep.
Can you explain that decision to put him, or what made him choose to be in that particular race?
Absolutely. So it's a challenge, as you mentioned, to find candidates with the experience in our district to run for Congress or offices at that level. We wanted to make sure that we had a candidate in that role who could really articulate the values of our party. And we did talk to other potential candidates, but it really seemed to us, A, that Sanjay was able to articulate our values in our community and really build those relationships, and B, that we knew that he knew the work that was required, because I think sometimes people step into these roles out of clout or reputation or experience or these other things that, yes, are valuable. But at the end of the day, it's who is willing to do the work of this campaign. And Sanjay, I know, knows what that means and knows how to do it.
Yeah, and I feel that you guys need to have it's sort of a delicate balance, because obviously in midterm elections, the president's approval ratings matter a lot for the other candidates running. At the same time, you're in a county that voted for Trump. How do you send that message that we hate Trump's agenda, but at the same time not without alienating voters who might like Trump or who might be kind of lukewarm to Trump but don't really necessarily hate him?
Right. I think you have to talk about the issues. I think that election is done, and that as opposed to focusing on an individual, we're not running against Trump. We're running at different levels against different folks, but mostly we're running on the issues. We want to create a world where there is economic justice, social justice, and environmental justice for all people. And we don't think the current path at both the federal and the state and our local level are sending us in that direction. So, and I think there's a lot of Republicans who agree with us, who are disappointed in some of the choices that are being made on their behalf at the national, federal, and local levels.
And what are those issues that you're going to focus on?
So I think the environment is an important issue here with our lagoon, and I don't think our candidates have been particularly effective at supporting or recovering the environmental issues certainly that our lagoon is facing. I think we have to focus on infrastructure, and really when I talk to local candidates and state candidates in particular, I don't sense vision. Where are we going? Can we create a green economy? Can we create the Space Coast and recreate ourselves as a center for renewable energy and really be at the cutting edge, as opposed to just trying to keep up with the roads? You know, I really think we have to shore up our infrastructure and shore up these things where we have been lagging behind, but also let's create some visionary politicians that can really see us into the future.
And then going back to fundraising, I think last time I checked, Bill Posey had roughly $500,000 cash on hand. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I haven't seen Sanjay's reports yet because the quarter hasn't ended yet. So how do you counter that? And at least in my experience, you don't necessarily have to outraise your opponent, but you have to raise a sufficient amount of money to, you know, be a good challenger.
Absolutely. So I think this is something you saw in the Connor Lamb race, where the Republicans definitely outspent in that race, but they still didn't win. So I think we are definitely going to be counting on relationships, on grassroots folks to get out there and knock doors and make calls and send texts. So we're going to be counting on a lot of that. We are also going to be counting on folks to make small donor contributions. We have seen historically where that has worked in, it worked in Obama's campaign, it worked for Sanders, and so you're going to see, I think, in our races, more small dollar contributors who are excited. So I would say that if we want to compete, and I would say to Democrats out there, if you want to see these candidates compete, if you can give $5, $10, $20 a month, if you want to see things change in November, we all have to be engaged in that process.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many things that we don't know. I mean, we don't know exactly what issues are going to be important in the midterm elections. Since, I mean,
I know it changes every day.
Yeah, but Parkland, I think, so far could be a deciding factor. How do you see Parkland playing into the upcoming elections?
I think Parkland could be a pivotal moment for igniting the energy of young people. And if young people turn out, we could see Democratic pickups that are of historical proportions. So I really, I don't think we've seen evidence of that yet, but I do see here locally and certainly in the state of Florida that this could really activate young people and that would make a real difference in who wins in November.
So I think there's a newly formed chapter of Moms Demand Action, which is a gun control group very known nationally, but up until Parkland, we didn't have a chapter. Are you seeing energy among women and moms in particular?
Yes, so we're seeing certainly in the Democratic Party, if you come to our meetings, we have a lot of women and a lot of moms in the room. And I think that you're seeing more people step in, from the Women's March to March for Our Lives. People are seeing that, to Me Too, that women need to use our voices if we want to change the political direction of our country. You're seeing more people than ever, more women than ever run for office. So I think that that energy is really going to have an influence on these elections, and certainly people getting ignited around their own issues, whatever those may be, whether that's Moms Demand Action or Now or any of these things. You're going to see that really work, I think, for the Democratic Party.
And how has Trump's election influenced that beyond just Parkland? I mean, you mentioned women's marches. I mean, what is really prompting these women to all of a sudden become more involved, now that they weren't before?
Well, I think you saw on his inauguration weekend that women stood up and said, this is not going to be acceptable in our country. You're not going to treat us like second-class citizens. We are going to lead this nation. So the disrespect with which our president has treated women is totally unacceptable to me and is totally unacceptable to many women. And I think that we need to use our voices in order to counter that kind of patriarchy in the government.
So you were a Bernie Sanders supporter, right?
Yes.
And I think a lot of the new energy was brought by Sanders.
Yes.
That's the more progressive wing of the Democratic Party. You're in a very Republican party, and looking at Pennsylvania again, Lamb was quite a moderate Democrat, and Republicans like to say that he ran as a conservative, which Democrats deny. I mean, I think we can debate that. But how do you win in a Republican county with such a progressive base? And I don't know all your candidates, but I assume that energy is more on the progressive side.
I think, first of all, I think you're seeing candidates in our campaigns that are across the gamut of Democratic views and perspectives. So I don't think it's necessarily all from one wing or another of the party. And in fact, I think that's why we've been so successful. We've cultivated a party where we all are coming together around the issues that matter to us, and we're focusing on those issues. I think that as far as progressivism is concerned, I don't see progressivism as far left. That's not my perception of how our political world actually works. People draw a line. I think it's actually a circle. I think that we do agree in many cases with people that consider themselves moderates. So I think it's an old way of looking at things to think that it's a line. I think a lot more of us agree, and I think a lot of us on the progressive wing are much more willing to engage this kind of no party affiliation voter that is also surging, frankly, in the current environment. So we have over 100,000 of those voters here in Brevard. I think the progressive voice speaks to those voters, potentially in a way that hardline establishment or what's perceived as establishment Democrats may not be able to.
So you see something similar to 2010 when the Tea Party kind of took over, and it happened also during a midterm election. Do you see sort of the same thing happening here, but with progressives this time?
So I have not seen any. I don't feel like this is an irrational movement. I feel like we are speaking to our values. I think that's another thing that's going to drive progressivism in our country. I think people are ready for leaders that speak to their values and that share them openly. So I don't think it's reactionary or pulling us off to a wing. I think it's a return to what does it mean to be an American? What do we want for the future of our country? When we're talking about progress, we're talking about, hey, Americans, let's look and see, where do we really want to go? Let's have some vision, as opposed to just trying to keep the wheels on this bus. Let's talk about where we want to go as a nation.
And you ran last year to be the chair of the state Democratic Party. What prompted that decision? You're coming from a county that I bet the Democratic leadership probably doesn't even know exists. So what prompted that decision? I mean, you obviously knew you would be the underdog, right? Mm-hmm. So why do it?
I think our party really needs to have some real conversations about what we stand for. And I didn't think that leaving the party in Florida as it was without having a real thriving conversation with what I consider to be fresh energy was a good thing. I always think that having opposition in these kinds of races is important, and I thought that I would be able to articulate those kinds of values. I really want to see our party be inclusive. I really want to see us represent our values. I really want to see us capture this energy that's erupting in our country with progressivism, with young people. I think it would be folly for us as a Democratic Party not to really engage that and to encompass include those folks in our party. So,
what do you think were your party's mistakes in the 2016 election? And we can talk more specifically about Florida.
Yes.
And nationwide if you want.
So I think, you know, in Brevard in particular, the party had made the mistake of not being inclusive. There were about 35 members before I got involved. We have nearly 200 now, and that's about a year later. I don't think we had done enough reaching out, and our message wasn't necessarily clear. I didn't even know that there was a Democratic Executive Committee that existed in our county. So I think that that's the case locally. I do think a lot of people have real concerns about the fact that superdelegates held so much sway in our nomination process. I think that should be an inclusive process, that everyone has a voice in it. And I think our party, unfortunately, the rules inside the Florida Democratic Party do consolidate power in the hands of too few people. And I think that we need to reach out. We need to be more inclusive. And if we want people to engage in our party, they have to have power in our party. We can't expect people to go out there and do all this work if they don't feel they have a real voice. So I think that that's a real...
What do you mean by more inclusive?
I think, for example, our state executive committee is made up of a body, some of whom have more votes than others. So if you're in a Miami where there's more Democrats, one person might have 60 some votes, whereas in another county, one person has 1 vote. So it's actually possible to choose who the next chair will be, to choose what the bylaws will be by talking to just 7 counties, I believe, out of 67 counties. So I think it's really important that everyone who comes to our table has 1 vote. Now that, obviously, if there's more Democrats, they need to be represented, but it shouldn't be a monolithic 1 person that you have to influence, right? If there's 120 votes that come out of, say, a Miami, those could be super diverse. Some of them may have voted for me in the last chair's race. Some of them may have voted for Terry. But as it stands right now, those 2 people cast all of those votes in one way, and I think that misrepresents the diversity and the experience of the Democrats in the state of Florida. So I think we do have to build a more inclusive representative party.
And in terms of ground game, or just Hillary Clinton, what went wrong for her? And do you learn the lessons from that? And we hear so much about the white working class voters and how she, you know, looked down on those kinds of voters. Has the party learned its lesson to reach out to those people more?
I can tell you that Brevard is certainly understands the importance of a grassroots ground game and understands that ridiculing our neighbors is not a way to win elections. So I think that I think we thought that this would be a walk, right? I think Democrats thought that the presidential election would be, there was no way that this could happen. And I think that we need to work on all of the 67 counties in Florida, not just those places where we think we can pick up Democratic votes. We need to be talking about our message. We need to be talking about economic, social, and environmental justice for all people in Brevard County, where people think it will be heard the least, because that is where I believe we can actually make the biggest changes. We're here at the other end of the I-4 corridor. We're here in a place where people think that the margins are high for Republicans. Even if we can change those margins, we can have a significant impact in places like the governor's race that is usually so close. So Brevard, I think, can have serious influence. Brevard and places like Brevard that are considered red, if we get out there and knock the doors and talk to our neighbors.
And what do you tell, white, maybe voters without a college education, why should they vote for a Democrat when they have felt that, Democrats don't even like them or don't like what they represent because they're not, racially diverse, because they're more conservative? What do you tell them? What is your pitch to those voters? Because they will be crucial if you want to grow in this county, right?
Absolutely. I think that we are the party of working people. We are the party that represent unions. We are not the party that recently passed a tax cut that benefits the wealthiest 1%. We are not the party that elected a leader who, frankly, represents the billionaire class. We are the party of people who are trying to get ahead. We are a party of increasing the minimum wage. We are a party, and I think that those values apply across racial boundaries, across socioeconomic boundaries. We're the party of the 99%. And I think that if we have ever given the impression that we are anything other than that, if there's anyone in my party, I grew up as a kid my dad was military, he was enlisted. Neither of my parents, went to college. And I was on food stamps. So I know the struggles of working people. And if anyone in my party has ever given anyone like me the impression that we're not your party, I want to personally apologize, because I don't want you to work against your own best interests. And frankly, voting for Democrats, where we support unionization, where we support working people, where we are taking care of health care and Social Security, this is the party of working people. And this is the party where we need to run candidates that really represent that. So, and where we care about whether your kids go. I'm the first, my dad and I actually graduated from college the same year. So I know what it's like to try to put a kid through college. And to be the kid I'll be in college debt forever. So that is our party. That is the Democratic Party. And if there have been foibles that have been, frankly, exploited by the other party, I think that those are misguided.
Stacey, thank you so much. Our time is up. We could stay here for longer, but thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
My thanks to Stacey Patel for joining me in the studio. If you have questions about today's show, you can email me at irangel@floridatoday.com. That's our show for this week. Be sure to join us again next week right here on WEFS and on floridatoday.com, and look for our weekly I Am Brevard podcast in iTunes and Google Play, music stores, or on the Stitcher Radio or SoundCloud apps.